So Jeff, um, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're a speaker as well. Is that your full-time job now?
Yeah, so I speak all over the country, different parts of the world as well. I work with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and I also am a speaker with Conscious Campus, GDA, and A speakers, and do a lot of work around the country. Basically, try to make sure that young people don't go down the same path that I had done. So my story is a cautionary tale, but it's also something that's uplifting because in this country, we have the ability to change, and I think it's a good. I think my story is a good example of that.
And how'd you meet Daryl here?
I met Daryl in 2016. I was still in the movement at that time, and I was asked to come and participate in a film uh, that was called Accidental Courtesy. And I did not actually know that Daryl was part of the film. I just thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to come and be part of this film, and I'll spread the propaganda of the movement like I always did at the time, and participate in this film. So we had met at a place in Alabama called Chris's Hot Dogs. It was where Hank Williams had written the song "Hey Hey Good Looking," and it was this like a music cafe type of place. And I'm outside. I'm on the bench with my girl at the time, and a vehicle pulls up, and out of the vehicle steps Daryl Davis. Now I didn't know he was Daryl Davis at the time. I knew who he was. I have to preempt this. So he steps out of the car, comes up, introduces himself, and says, "Hi, I'm Daryl Davis. You must be Jeff Schoep." And yeah, so I got up and I shook his hand. We introduced each other or ourselves, and I couldn't quite place it. In the movement, we knew who Daryl Davis was because he pulled people out of the Klan and neo-Nazi groups and things like that. But at that moment, it didn't register for me. So I'm thinking, gosh, I know this guy's name and I know his face too from somewhere, but I couldn't quite place it. And we're getting along, we're talking about music and all kinds of different things. And we walk in there and sit down, and the cameras are rolling at this point. And then it clicked in my head. I remember who this guy is. He's the person that pulls people out of these groups. So I start getting aggressive in my tone and pound my fist on the table. And I said, Daryl, I'll fight to the last bullet for my people. And because I realized we were getting along a little bit too well, and I'm on camera, and I was supposed to be in my role as the leader of the National Socialist Movement. I'm getting along with this guy too well, so I figured I better throw some shade into this conversation and get it negative. But the thing is, Daryl didn't react. Like normally in a situation like that, the other person is going to push back. Daryl didn't do that. Like when I made those comments, he just went, and continued the conversation like I never even got aggressive or anything. And I thought, what is going on here? Like, why isn't he reacting? So I'm really tuned into the conversation now. I'm really wanting to figure out Daryl Davis. And then Daryl had said, because Daryl was asking me about my beliefs and things. And he says, "You want to know why I do what I do?" And I said, "Sure." Conversations are reciprocal. And I was willing, even at that time when I was in the movement, I was willing to listen, because he was respectful and I was mostly respectful to him, except for that one exchange. And Daryl told me about how racism and hate affected him as a child, and how he was in the Boy Scouts and about 11 years old, and white adults were throwing rocks at him, and he had was rushed out of there, and his parents had asked, or he was pulled out of there by the Boy Scout troop leaders. And when he got home, his parents asked what happened to him, and Daryl had said that people were throwing rocks at him because they didn't like the Boy Scouts, and his parents had to explain to him that they were throwing rocks because he was black. And I tell you, that didn't sit right with me. Like, that really bothered me, that story.
And that quickly, it made an impact that quickly hearing that story.
It did, but I didn't try to show that. I'm trying to, fulfill my role in the movement at the time. I'm not telling Daryl at that point that it bothered me. I don't know if he could see it or not. That would be a question for him. But
Because you're
um,
the head of the movement at that time on the national scale.
yeah, the National Socialist Movement. Yes.
I guess where did you go from there? What made you want to continue the conversation? And do you see that as a turning point when you started to see the light, if you will?
I see that as like one of the major first seeds that was planted because right at that moment, I look back now, and I would like to say that at that moment I should have walked away. That's when it really started getting to me that what I'm doing is wrong. Daryl never once told me that I was wrong. He never said, you're wrong, this is evil, this is bad. All those things that everybody else that my family and everybody else over the years had tried. He didn't do that. He basically was there to listen, to hear, to have a respectful conversation, and to share, some of the things that he had went through. And what happened in that moment was I could see his humanity, and I was somebody that was dehumanizing other human beings for a very, very long time. When you dehumanize someone, you lose your humanity in that process, and I had lost mine a long time ago. Daryl was able to reconnect that, and it took time. I'd like to say in these processes, when you see the humanity in another person, right there, you snap your fingers and make the change. I wish that was my story. For most people, it doesn't work that way. Once in a while, you have stories like that, but typically it's a process. It takes time, and what Daryl had done was a lot like Johnny Appleseed. He had planted that first major seed, and that was the beginning of my de-radicalization process and disengagement process. So I didn't disengage immediately, but by I left the movement in early 2019, but I was going through the process since about 2016.
So, what were your core beliefs? Tell Rebecca your core beliefs, or the movement's core beliefs back then.
Well, basically the core beliefs of the organization was to have like a white homeland to separate from all the other races and to have this white National Socialist homeland. That was the core beliefs and the goal of the movement. So it was basically to separate from other people and divide the country.
And I guess this is a question for both of you, because this was not your first conversation. So, Daryl, what made you want to meet with Jeff again? And Jeff, what made you say okay to that meeting? Did you reach out to him? Did he reach out to you?
Okay, so uh, I'd gotten wind that Jeff was leaving the movement, and I know that for somebody who's been in that movement that long, um, and you're leaving because you don't believe in the tenets of the movement any longer, that they consider you to be a traitor. You cannot go back because now you have betrayed your family. And then the people on the outside, many of them, it's very hard for them to accept somebody who is a former racist. It's like it carries a stigma. So I knew, this guy, I'd met. We got along, even though we had different ideologies. We'd gotten along when we met. He was respectful of me. I of him. Was going to be swinging in the wind. He would have nowhere to go. Regular people were not going to accept him because he's a former neo-Nazi. The Nazis are not going to accept him because he's betrayed them. So what's he going to do? So I called him up on the phone. I'd gotten his number when we first met. I called him up and I said, "Hey man, I understand you've left the movement. I'd like to hear about that. Maybe we can get together and do some things." And he was all amenable to it.
I tell you what, Rebecca, when I got that phone call from Daryl, Daryl had called me after I'd gotten out of the movement, um, and I don't get emotional, in the cause and the movement that I was involved in. You don't show emotions and stuff. But when Daryl called me, I was at rock bottom, and I saw his number pop up on my phone because we did exchange numbers as he mentioned, and I thought, oh wow, Daryl Davis is calling. So I answer the phone, and one of the first things he says, I see you left the movement, and is there anything that I can do to help? And I just felt like I just felt like breaking down at that moment. I mean, I didn't say that at the time. I mean, Daryl knows that now, but it really meant a lot because when you're standing in that in that space where you're leaving everything that you've known for, in my case, 27 years. Um, it felt like the whole entire world was coming down on me in a lot of ways, and I didn't have a whole lot of support. I could count the support system on one hand. So his outreach at that point, and not wanting anything, not not saying, hey, you should do this, or I want this, or I want that. He was calling out of a place of concern and care, and he didn't want anything. He just wanted to know how he could help, and that's true friendship, that's true brotherhood, and that's who Daryl Davis is as a human being. That's just who he is, and that's why he's so successful at what he does. Is because it's not performative. It's real. It's authentic. That's the when you meet Daryl Davis, that's the real authentic person right there.
Tell Rebecca about your family and your mom's job and that, because Jeff is not, a lot of people think, oh well, he's a Nazi, he's a Klansman, his parents and grandparents must have been in the Klan or the Nazis or something, and that's why he's this way. That's not always the case. Like I said, these people are not stamped from a standard cookie cutter. They can come from a perfectly normal, non-racist family and just make a left turn or something, and then of course it impacts the family.
100%. And in my case, so my mother and grandparents came over from Germany, and my grandfather, great uncles, they had all fought in the German army during World War II. And my mother had come over as an immigrant, and well, they did as well after the war. And so a lot of times when I mention that in my story, people think, aha, so the family taught him this stuff. And quite the contrary, actually. My grandfather had told me once I was involved in this stuff, he was like, Jeff, the path that you are on is going to lead to one of two places, prison or death. Please, break free from this. Please get away from this. It's not going to be good for you. And I was so radicalized at that time. I just said to him, I said, you might have surrendered, you might have given up, but I'll never stop fighting for my people, and I was very disrespectful, and I jumped ahead a little bit there, as Daryl had mentioned, how it affected my family. This is, I think, kind of important as well, because a lot of pressure was put on me to get out of this movement over the years, and every lash of the proverbial whip just entrenched me further, made me fight harder. And early on in the 90s, so my mother was an attorney. She had worked hard to become an attorney, and she had run to be a judge. That was her dream, to be a judge in the state of Minnesota, where we're from. And she was elected to be a judge. The way she explained this took place back in the 90s, that for all the new all the new judges had to have the governor's signature. It was basically a formality. And when it came time for her to get her signature from the governor, she got a phone call instead, and she said the governor had told her, Mrs. Schoep, your father fought in the German army during the war. Your son is a leader in the neo-Nazi movement. I don't feel you're fit to be a judge in this state. So that my involvement in this stuff cost my mother a career.
And Jeff, so if we fast forward to you have that next conversation with Daryl and you've left the movement, you decide you want to change your life around. What made you decide really to become a public speaker and make a job out of letting people know about your experiences and letting them know um, how quickly seeds of hate can be sown?
Well, I felt like the best thing that I could do with the skill set that I had, to be able to give something back, was to speak out. I mean, I had the business skills because I ran a business when I was in the movement. I ran a record label. I had the leadership skills. There's a lot of things I could have done that would have been a lot easier than this. That would have been a lot more comfortable, I guess you could say. But the honest truth of it is when I joined the movement, I thought I was doing something good and noble. I thought I was a part of this great cause that was going to serve my country and serve my people, and I was on this noble mission. Um, when I realized how awful the mission was that I was on and how wrong it was, and seeing the damage that it was causing people like Daryl Davis and other individuals that I had met, um, I felt like you can't just walk away from this, like this is something that you need to set things right. And it's not like anybody forced me to do it or pressured me to do it. It was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to fix some of the damage that I had done by the life that I had led. And I felt like the best way I could do that is by speaking out and trying to make a difference, making sure other people don't go down the same path, and also helping pull people that are in that life, helping bring them back out. That we don't pull them out, but we give them the tools to be able to do that themselves. So, and Daryl, I'm sure will tell you, like, he doesn't pull people out; he gives them the toolkit. Is that right, Daryl? Like,
That
you
is
give them the
correct, right?
toolkit.
And
Yeah.
Jeff, if you can put it into words, how has Daryl changed your life?
Oh, that's such a broad question. There's so many ways. Like, he's Daryl Davis is like family to me. I mean, we're brothers as far as I'm concerned, and he's changed my life completely. He's set an example. He's been a mentor. He's been somebody I've learned so much from. Just his ability to sit down and communicate with people. I mean, I call that relational dialogue, and it's something that I learned from Daryl Davis. He's one of the very best in the world at this method. And as you see, by the success in his work, he changes lives. So he changed my life, and I'm forever grateful for that. And it's been incredible.
Well, what I would add is that, we all are told as kids, and perhaps, you were told as well, or if you have kids, you tell your kids this: a tiger does not change its stripes. A leopard does not change its spots. That's who they are. And that is true. They are born with those stripes and those spots. And so, why would we think that a Nazi or a Klansman would change their swastika or their robe and hood? Well, we're wrong in that regard, because they're not born with that swastika or that robe and hood. That is a learned behavior. That is something that is acquired. The tiger and leopard, were born with those things, so they cannot change. Those are immutable characteristics. But what Jeff is talking about, what I'm talking about, these, people do not think that these people are redeemable. They are. They learned it. It can be unlearned, and that's why, we stress that with people. And Jeff has helped, get people out of these movements and prevented a lot of young people from going, down those rabbit holes. I've seen things with Jeff that would blow your mind. Tell her about Duke.
Oh yeah, that's another great story. So this is Duke Schneider was my old chief of security, and his they had a family nurse that had taken care of Duke's father, and her name was Catherine. She was a African American lady, and Duke, she had stayed friends with the family, had stayed around them, and all that, even after Duke's father had passed away. And now, mind you, Duke was chief of security in the NSM. He was the top security official for a long time in the group, and he had gotten some kind of, it was like throat cancer, or he had some kind of tumor in his throat, and he was in the hospital. They told him, it's cancer. You're going to be here for a while. And Catherine was there in the hospital with him and refused to leave. And Duke says, Catherine, you don't need to stay here at the hospital with me. I'm probably going to be here a long time. This is, you don't have to stay here. And Catherine had said, Duke, I am not leaving this hospital until you walk up out of here and you are 100% better until you're cured. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to pray with you, and I'm going to make sure
Well, this is
not
the
to
same
leave until
woman
you're
that
better.
took care of his father, of Duke's father.
Correct. Yes. And at that moment, so they're having this conversation, and Duke says to her, Catherine, when I walk up out of this hospital, I'm going to marry you. And she accepted right then and there. So that was the plan, and he was cured. He walked up out of that hospital and he married Catherine. They've been married for years now. And just about every time I'm in New York, I see them. And you'd swear they were like high school sweethearts, and one of the most wonderful couples. After so many years, to see that they're still so tight and get along so well. It's one of the best, tightest couples, most loving couples that I know.
That's
So
It's really
they
amazing.
awesome.
say opposites attract.
Yeah, really, really,
Right.
really.
And And it's
Jeff,
one of those
thank
stories
you.
too, like love conquers
Yeah,
hate, 100%. It really does. That's like the story about love conquering hate.
I love it. I love it. Thank Jeff, it was such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the
Me
time to
too.
do this and for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that very much.